Marcus Webb sat in what could only be described as the galaxy's most intimidating waiting room. The ceiling stretched 3 stories high, covered in swirling holographic displays of mathematical equations that hurt his brain just looking at them. Around him, creatures from dozens of species whispered nervously in languages that sounded like everything from wind chimes to garbage disposals having existential crises. "Next candidate, please report to examination chamber 7, announced a voice that somehow managed to sound bored in 17 different frequencies simultaneously. Marcus checked his candidate number. Lucky him. He shuffled toward the chamber, past a nervous Zephyrian whose tentacles were literally tied in knots, and a crystalline being whose entire body was flickering like a dying fluorescent bulb. Great. Even the rock people had anxiety issues here. The examination chamber looked like someone had crossed a dentist's office with a spaceship cockpit, and then asked a committee of engineers to make it more intimidating. Marcus settled into the chair, which immediately began adjusting itself to his human physiology with a series of clicks and whirs that sounded vaguely disapproving. "Good morning, candidate," said a tall, elegant creature who appeared to have been designed by someone with a serious obsession with purple skin and entirely too many eyes. "I am Vextar, Senior Telepathic Examination Proctor. I trust you understand the procedures?" Marcus nodded. "Standard telepathic scan to prevent cheating, followed by the written examination. I've read the manual." Vextar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which Marcus assumed was either a sign of approval or the alien equivalent of rolling one's eyes. "Excellent. The telepathic scan is purely routine. We simply verify that your mind contains only naturally acquired knowledge and no artificial enhancements or stored data chips. It takes approximately 30 seconds. "Sounds good," Marcus said, trying to project confidence while internally wondering if thinking about not thinking about something counted as thinking about it. Vextar placed his elongated fingers against Marcus's temples. "Please remain calm and allow your mind to flow naturally. Do not attempt to resist or redirect your thoughts." The telepathic connection engaged with what felt like someone gently plugging a USB cable directly into Marcus's brain. For exactly 3.7 seconds, everything went smoothly. Then Vextar's eyes went wide. All 4 of them. At once. "What the actual cosmic void?" Vextar whispered, his usually smooth telepathic voice now sounding like someone had thrown it through a blender. His purple skin began shifting rapidly through shades that Marcus was pretty sure didn't exist on any standard color wheel. The connection severed abruptly. Vextar stumbled backward, crashed into his monitoring console, and began frantically pressing buttons, while making sounds that could charitably be described as distressed whale noises. Marcus said. "Is everything okay? Did I break something?" "Emergency Protocol 7. Vextar shouted into his communicator, his voice cracking like a teenager asking someone to prom. "Require sealed rooms, require excluded tenants, possible contamination event, level unknown, possibly unprecedented." "Contamination event?" Marcus asked. "Dude, I showered this morning." Vextar stared at him with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this moment. "Your mind," he said slowly, "is not supposed to work like that." "Like what?" "Like a tornado made of pure chaos that someone taught to solve math problems while simultaneously having an existential crisis about breakfast cereal." Marcus blinked. "That seems oddly specific." "Sendor! Nimblef!" Vextar continued screaming into his communicator. "And Administrator Quelix, and possibly a priest, several priests, from different religions." The examination room's emergency lights began flashing, casting everything in an ominous red glow that made the whole situation feel like a deleted scene from a horror movie about standardized testing. "Look," Marcus said reasonably, "maybe we could just skip the telepathic part and go straight to the written exam. I'm actually pretty good at bubble sheets." Vextar looked at him like he'd just suggested using a black hole as a paperweight. "Candidate Marcus Webb," Vextar said, his voice now carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much, "I am requesting hazard pay." Within minutes, the examination chamber had transformed from a quiet testing facility into what looked like the galaxy's most bureaucratic emergency response. Administrator Quelix arrived first, gliding through the door on what appeared to be a combination of tentacles and disappointed expectations. Quelix was the kind of being who looked like evolution had gotten halfway through designing a jellyfish, gotten distracted by a really good sandwich, and then just decided to add some office attire and call it done. The fact that this jellyfish sandwich hybrid was wearing a tie somehow made everything worse. "Proctor Vextar," Quelix said, in a voice that suggested decades of dealing with what the administration probably called unusual incidents. Your emergency call mentioned contamination, unprecedented mental chaos, and I quote, requesting backup, bourbon, and possibly witness protection. That's accurate, Vextar replied, still clutching his monitoring console like it was the last solid thing in a universe gone mad. Administrator, I've been conducting telepathic examinations for 47 years. I've scanned the minds of quantum mathematicians, philosophical paradox theorists, and even that one Nexarian who claimed he could divide by zero. And this is worse. Marcus raised his hand. Can I just point out that I'm sitting right here? Also, I have a 3 o'clock appointment after this, so if we could maybe speed things along. Quellic's tentacles performed what might have been a shrug. Candidate Webb, I apologize for the delay. Perhaps you could explain what happened from your perspective? Nothing happened, Marcus said. Purple guy touched my head, made some weird noises, and now apparently I'm a contamination event. Honestly, it's not even in my top 10 weirdest Tuesday experiences. Top 10? Vextar whispered. What could possibly be weirder than this? Well, there was last week when my neighbor's cat learned to use the doorbell, and then there was that time I accidentally got trapped in a revolving door for 20 minutes while a mariachi band played outside. And oh, there was definitely that incident with the grocery store self-checkout machine that achieved sentience and started giving me life advice. The room fell silent except for the sound of Vextar quietly whimpering. The door slid open again, and in walked Dr. Nimbleton, the university's leading xenopsychologist. Dr. Nimbleton looked like someone had asked a computer to design the most academic creature possible and then added just enough eccentricity to make tenure committees nervous. They had approximately 6 arms, 2 heads, and what appeared to be a briefcase that was also somehow a pet. Ah, Dr. Nimbleton said, their left head speaking while their right head took notes. The infamous human consciousness incident. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I've brought my portable analysis equipment and 3 different types of sedatives, just in case. Sedatives, Marcus asked. Are those for you or for me? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Dr. Nimbleton began unpacking equipment that looked like someone had crossed a medical scanner with a Rubik's Cube and then taught it to have trust issues. Proctor Vextar, please describe exactly what you encountered during the telepathic scan. Vextar's 4 eyes darted around the room, as if he was worried the very act of describing it might summon something terrible. It was like stepping into a hurricane, Doctor, but not a normal hurricane. A hurricane made of random song lyrics, mathematical equations, grocery shopping lists, and what I can only describe as an ongoing internal argument about whether cereal counts as soup. Cereal doesn't count as soup, Marcus said automatically. See? Vextar shouted, pointing all 4 hands at Marcus. It's still happening! The chaos is infectious! Dr. Nimbleton's right head looked up from its notes. Fascinating, and this represents normal human cognition. As far as I know, Marcus shrugged. I mean, I got decent grades in school, I can usually remember where I parked my car, and I only have mild existential dread about 3 times a day. Pretty standard stuff. The 3 aliens exchanged looks that somehow managed to convey several paragraphs worth of concern without using any actual words. Dr. Nimbleton, Administrator Quellic said slowly, I think we need a more detailed analysis. Dr. Nimbleton's equipment hummed to life with the kind of sound that suggested it was either very sophisticated or very confused about its purpose in life. Possibly both. Mr. Webb, I'm going to attempt a more careful mental probe. Unlike Proctor Vextar's standard surface scan, this will involve a deeper examination of your cognitive processes. Will it hurt? Marcus asked. Not you, Nimbleton replied ominously. Please remain still. The xenopsychologist placed a device that looked like a metallic octopus having an identity crisis against Marcus's forehead. Immediately, both of Dr. Nimbleton's heads began narrating what they were experiencing, creating a stereo commentary track that sounded like the world's most disturbing nature documentary. Initial contact established, said the left head. Surface thoughts appear to be, oh my, he's currently thinking about whether hot dogs are sandwiches, while simultaneously calculating his monthly budget and remembering the lyrics to a song that doesn't seem to exist. The song is called Banana Phone, Marcus offered helpfully. It's very catchy. Ring, ring, ring. Ring, 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 ring. Banana phone. Make it stop, Vextar wailed from his corner. Moving deeper into the consciousness layers, continued the right head, its voice beginning to sound strained. I'm encountering what appears to be a continuous background process involving... Is this entire section just dedicated to imaginary conversations he might have with people he hasn't seen in years? Oh yeah, Marcus nodded. That's the shower argument database. Very important for winning fights that already happened 5 years ago. There's an entire filing system in here labeled things I should have said instead, the left head reported, now sounding slightly hysteric. It's alphabetized. Why is it alphabetized? Organization is important, Marcus said reasonably. Dr. Nimbleton's equipment began making warning sounds that suggested it was having some serious philosophical disagreements with whatever it was reading. Deeper scan initiated. I'm now encountering what appears to be a continuous loop of a commercial jingle from something called J.G. Wentworth, running simultaneously with advanced calculus problems, and a detailed mental reconstruction of every embarrassing thing the subject has ever done. It's my money and I need it now, Marcus sang unconsciously. The chaos is spreading, Vexter shouted, covering all 4 of his eyes. Someone quarantine the human! Wait, there's more, the right head gasped. There's an entire section that appears to be running constant background checks on whether he locked his car, turned off the stove, and... Oh dear Cosmos. He's mentally replaying every awkward interaction he's ever had while simultaneously planning his grocery shopping for next week and wondering if penguins have knees. Do penguins have knees? Marcus asked. I've been wondering about that for months. Administrator Quellick's tentacles began writhing in what was either extreme agitation or an attempt at complex mathematics. Dr. Nimbleton, please tell me this is abnormal human cognition. Scanning deeper neural pathways, the left head reported through what sounded like gritted teeth, if jellyfish sandwich hybrids could grit their teeth. I'm finding layers of recursive worry loops about whether other people think he's weird, existential dread about the heat death of the universe, and... Wait. Is this entire cortical section dedicated to remembering random facts about otters? Otters hold hands when they sleep so they don't drift apart, Marcus said proudly. Also, they have favorite rocks. Dr. Nimbleton's briefcase pep began making alarmed chittering sounds and tried to hide under the examination table. Abort the scan! Both heads suddenly screamed in unison. Abort! Abort! I've reached what appears to be the deep consciousness layer, and it's just an infinite loop of him wondering why people say after dark, when it's actually after light, mixed with the complete lyrics to every song he's ever heard, and a running commentary on why cereal commercials are so unrealistically happy. The octopus device sparked, smoked, and died with a sound like a mechanical sigh of relief. Dr. Nimbleton stumbled backward, both heads looking like they'd seen the cosmic equivalent of their browser history made public. That, they said shakily, was like trying to drink from a fire hydrant that was also having an existential crisis and knew all the words to Bohemian Rhapsody. Great song, Marcus said cheerfully. Is this a good time to mention that I haven't had my morning coffee yet, so you're actually seeing me at about 60% mental capacity? The room fell so silent you could have heard a pin drop, assuming pins made sounds when they contemplated the meaninglessness of existence. Okay, Marcus said, looking around at the traumatized faces surrounding him. I'm getting the impression that maybe human brains work differently than you expected? Differently? Vextar's voice cracked so hard it probably registered on seismic equipment 3 systems away. That wasn't a mind, that was a cosmic horror show with a subscription to Random Facts Quarterly. Look, I can explain, Marcus said, settling back in his chair with the patience of someone who had clearly been through this conversation before. Human consciousness is basically like having 17 different radio stations playing at the same time, except half of them are playing music, a quarter are doing talk radio about whether we left the garage door open, and the rest are just static that occasionally forms into the shapes of embarrassing memories from middle school. But Administrator Quellick's tentacles performed what might have been the galactic equivalent of rubbing one's temples. But how do you function? How do you make decisions? How do you perform complex tasks when your brain is apparently running a continuous mental circus? That's the weird part, Marcus shrugged. The chaos actually helps. Like when I'm trying to solve a problem, part of my brain is thinking about the actual problem. Another part is remembering something vaguely related I read once. Another part is panicking about whether I'm smart enough to solve it, and somehow the combination of all that mental noise usually spits out a solution. Dr. Nimbleton's left head was frantically taking notes, while the right head stared into the middle distance like it was reconsidering its career choices. You're describing a cognitive process that should be completely non-functional. By every model of consciousness we understand, a mind operating under those conditions should collapse into catatonic paralysis. Oh, that happens too, Marcus said cheerfully. We call it Sunday afternoons. But the multitasking, Quelix insisted, clearly struggling with the concept. Your mind was simultaneously processing mathematical equations, song lyrics, social anxieties, random trivia, financial planning, and what appeared to be an ongoing internal debate about sandwich classifications. Yeah, that's pretty standard. Right now, for example, I'm listening to you guys, wondering if I should have worn a different shirt, calculating how long this is taking, remembering that I need to call my mom later, and trying to decide if that weird smell in here is ozone or if someone brought fish for lunch. Vexstar made a sound like a deflating balloon that had studied philosophy. How do you sleep? How do you ever achieve mental rest? Sleep, Marcus laughed. Oh, we don't rest. At night, the chaos just shifts into a different mode. We call them dreams, and they're basically what happens when all the random stuff in our heads decides to throw a party and invite some physics-defying plot elements. Last night, I dreamed I was late for an exam I graduated from 10 years ago, but the exam was being administered by my third-grade teacher, who had turned into a talking sandwich. A talking sandwich, Dr. Nimbleton repeated weakly. It was very disappointed in me. The three aliens exchanged glances that somehow conveyed volumes about their growing realization that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. Let me get this straight, Quelix said slowly. You're telling me that humans have evolved to function with what essentially amounts to controlled mental chaos, and that this chaos somehow enhances your problem-solving abilities rather than hindering them? Bingo, Marcus said. It's like having a really noisy brainstorming session going on in your head 24/7. Sure, 90% of the ideas are garbage, but that other 10% comes up with solutions that nobody else would ever think of because nobody else would be weird enough to connect ancient Greek philosophy with breakfast cereal marketing strategies. And this is normal for your species? Dr. Nimbleton asked, both heads speaking in unison for the first time since arriving. Totally normal. In fact, I'm probably on the calmer end of the spectrum. You should see what it's like inside the head of someone with HEHD, or an artist, or heaven forbid, someone who works in customer service. Vexstar whimpered. There are worse examples? Oh yeah! My sister's a kindergarten teacher. Her brain has to simultaneously manage 27 5-year-olds, remember which one is allergic to what, plan educational activities, and somehow maintain the patience of a saint while little Timmy explains why he glued his finger to his desk again. Her mental landscape makes mine look like a peaceful meditation garden. The room's emergency lighting was still flashing, but now it seemed less like a warning and more like the universe's way of throwing a rave to celebrate the discovery of a completely incomprehensible form of consciousness. So you're saying, Administrator Quelix said, their voice taking on the tone of someone who was beginning to glimpse the truly horrifying scope of what they were dealing with, that humanity has achieved interstellar travel, complex mathematics, artistic expression, and technological advancement while operating with minds that are essentially cognitive disaster zones? Pretty much, Marcus nodded. We're like the galaxy's proof that you don't need a well-organized mind to get stuff done. Sometimes you just need enough random mental energy bouncing around that eventually some of it hits the right solution by accident. Dr. Nimbleton had recovered enough to start consulting what appeared to be a holographic database that looked like someone had taught a filing cabinet to have anxiety attacks. Mr. Webb, according to our preliminary human psychological profiles, you registered as having relatively standard cognitive patterns for your species. Yeah, that sounds about right, Marcus agreed. I mean, I'm pretty boring as humans go. Boring? Vexstar's voice hit a pitch that probably violated several noise ordinances. You call that mental catastrophe boring? Well, yeah. I don't have any particularly unusual conditions. I'm not especially creative, I don't have ADHD, I'm not sleep-deprived beyond the normal human baseline, and I haven't had any major traumatic experiences that would make my brain extra weird. Administrator Quelix's tentacles began performing what looked like emergency semaphore. Are you suggesting that there are humans with more chaotic mental processes than what we just witnessed? Oh, absolutely. Like I mentioned, there's my sister, the kindergarten teacher. Then there's my buddy Jake, who's a paramedic and can somehow keep track of 17 different emergency protocols while driving through traffic and eating a sandwich. Or my neighbor, who's a software programmer and spends all day thinking in multiple programming languages simultaneously while debugging code and contemplating whether the problems he's solving actually matter in the cosmic sense. Dr. Nimbleton's right head began hyperventilating while the left head frantically scrolled through data. According to these profiles, we have documented cases of humans with attention deficit disorders, anxiety conditions, artistic temperaments, and something called gifted child syndrome recovery. What's gifted child syndrome recovery? Quelix asked, though their tone suggested they weren't sure they wanted to know. Oh, That's when someone was told they were really smart as a kid, and then spent their entire adult life having an ongoing existential crisis about whether they're actually intelligent or just good at taking tests, combined with crippling perfectionism and the constant fear that everyone will discover they're actually an imposter, Marcus explained helpfully. It's super common. Vextar had begun rocking back and forth in his chair. There are millions of minds like this on your planet? Billions, actually, and that's not even counting the really interesting ones. Artists, scientists, people who work in emergency services, parents with multiple children, anyone who's ever worked retail during the holidays. Oh, and comedians. Their brains are basically chaos engines designed specifically to find unexpected connections between completely unrelated concepts. Dr. Nimbleton's equipment started making sounds like it was filing a formal complaint with the universe. Mr. Webb, you mentioned your ADHD medication wore off earlier. This suggests your natural mental state is even more chaotic than what we observed. Oh yeah, definitely. Right now I'm running on about 3 cups of coffee and sheer willpower. When I'm unmedicated, my brain is basically like having a browser open with 47 tabs, half of which are playing videos, a quarter of which are online shopping sites I forgot about, and the rest are random Wikipedia articles about subjects I got curious about at 2 in the morning. The room's emergency lighting began flashing faster, as if the building itself was having a panic attack. But here's the really wild part, Marcus continued, apparently unaware that he was causing several advanced alien civilizations to question everything they thought they knew about consciousness. Even with all that mental chaos, humans are actually pretty good at stuff. We've got doctors who can perform surgery while mentally planning their grocery shopping, teachers who can manage classrooms while remembering 30 different students' individual needs, and engineers who designed this space station while probably humming songs and wondering if they locked their cars. Administrator Quelix made a sound like a bureaucratic form achieving sentience and immediately filing a complaint about existing. You're telling me that the space station we're currently on, this marvel of engineering that represents the pinnacle of galactic educational technology, was designed by minds that operate like yours? Well, not exactly like mine. The human engineers were probably way more chaotic. They had to deal with project deadlines, budget constraints, and committee meetings. Plus, most engineers I know are powered by caffeine and spite, which really kicks the mental chaos into overdrive. Vextar stood up suddenly, swayed slightly and sat back down. I need to update our safety protocols, all of them. We need hazard pay for telepathic contact with humans, specialized training courses, and probably therapy coverage. Actually, Marcus said, checking his watch, speaking of humans and chaos, I really do need to get to that 3 o'clock appointment. It's my performance review at work, and my boss wants to discuss my time management skills. Which is ironic because I've been mentally rehearsing this conversation for the past 20 minutes, while also wondering if otters understand the concept of weekends. The 3 aliens stared at him in the kind of silence usually reserved for witnessing cosmic events that fundamentally alter one's understanding of reality. Your species, Dr. Nimbleton said slowly, is going to revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, cognitive science, and probably several branches of philosophy we haven't invented yet. Cool, Marcus said. Does that mean I passed the exam? 3 hours later, Marcus found himself in the middle of what could only be described as the galaxy's most bureaucratic emergency session. The conference room had filled with representatives from dozens of species, all of whom looked like they were reconsidering fundamental assumptions about how consciousness was supposed to work. Administrator Quelix had apparently called in favors from across the galactic education network. There were crystalline beings whose thoughts usually moved in perfect geometric patterns, gaseous entities who communicated through harmonious frequency modulations, and mechanical intelligences that processed information in orderly sequential layers. All of them were staring at Marcus like he was a puzzle that had just explained itself by setting itself on fire. The Human Exception Clause, announced Director Vorthak, a being who looked like someone had crossed a professor with a thunderstorm and given it tenure, will hereby be implemented across all galactic university testing protocols effective immediately. Vextar, who had been promoted to head the newly created Extreme Mental Hazard Division in what was possibly the fastest career advancement in galactic educational history, stood to present his findings. He still looked slightly shell-shocked, but had gained the confident bearing of someone who had survived something unprecedented and lived to file a report about it. After extensive analysis, Vextar began, consulting notes that appeared to have been written by someone experiencing a controlled nervous breakdown. We have determined that human consciousness operates on principles that are fundamentally incompatible with standard telepathic examination protocols. Human minds exhibit what can only be described as productive chaos, a state of controlled cognitive anarchy that somehow results in functional problem-solving abilities. In layman's terms, Dr. Nimbleton added, both heads speaking in carefully practiced unison, human brains are basically jazz music that learned calculus. Marcus raised his hand. Is that good or bad? We honestly don't know, admitted Director Vorthak. Our best theoretical models suggest that minds operating under those conditions should collapse into gibbering insanity within minutes. The fact that humans not only function but thrive represents a complete paradigm shift in our understanding of consciousness itself. A crystalline being whose thoughts typically moved in perfect mathematical spirals chimed in with a voice like wind through geometric shapes. We have consulted with our finest philosophers, cognitive scientists, and theoretical consciousness researchers. The consensus is that humanity has somehow weaponized mental chaos into a functioning cognitive system. Weaponized seems like a strong word, Marcus said. You solved a complex quantum mechanics problem yesterday while humming a jingle about car insurance and wondering if your neighbor's dog likes you, Vexstar pointed out. If that's not weaponized chaos, what is? The meeting continued for another hour, during which Marcus learned that his brain had become something of a celebrity in academic circles. Apparently, recordings of Dr. Nimbleton's scan had been distributed to consciousness researchers across 17 different star systems, most of whom had responded with variations of, "This can't be real," and "We need to rethink everything we know about minds." Finally, they got to the practical matters. "Mr. Webb," Director Vorthak said, "you will be taking your examination under specially designed conditions. We have constructed a telepathy-proof testing chamber using principles we learned from studying black hole event horizons and existential philosophy." "That seems like overkill," Marcus said. "We also have medical teams standing by, counselors for our staff, and a special research grant to study what we're now calling human cognitive resilience syndrome," the director continued. "Your species appears to have evolved mental immune systems that not only tolerate chaos, but actually require it to function optimally." The testing chamber they led him to looked like someone had decided a normal exam room wasn't nearly paranoid enough and had consulted with experts in preventing cosmic horror. The walls were covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The desk appeared to be made from crystallized mathematics, and the chair had more warning labels than a radioactive waste disposal unit. "Will I be able to focus in here?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair, which immediately began playing what sounded like elevator music designed by alien philosophers. "The chamber is specifically calibrated to provide the optimal level of background mental stimulation for human cognition," Dr. Nimbleton explained proudly. "It generates a controlled chaos field that should allow your mind to operate at peak efficiency while protecting our staff from telepathic contamination." Marcus opened his test booklet and immediately felt at home. The questions were challenging but fair, covering everything from advanced astrophysics to interspecies diplomatic protocol. Around question 15, he realized he was unconsciously humming along to the elevator music while simultaneously calculating orbital mechanics and wondering if the weird symbols on the walls spelled anything interesting in ancient Earth languages. 2 hours later, he emerged from the chamber to find half the university's faculty waiting outside like he was some kind of cognitive celebrity. "How did it go?" Vexter asked nervously. "Pretty good, I think. The chaos field was actually really helpful. Reminded me of studying in college with my roommate's music playing and the TV on in the background." Marcus handed over his completed exam. "By the way, those wall symbols definitely spell out 'Beware of dog' in Latin, which seems like an odd choice for a testing facility." Dr. Nimbleton's left head began laughing while the right head frantically checked architectural plans. "Those weren't supposed to be readable. They were meant to be abstract mathematical concepts designed to stimulate cognitive flexibility." "Oh, they did that too. But they're also definitely a dog warning. Question though, do I get my results normally? Or do you need to invent new grading protocols for human weirdness?" Director Vorthak stepped forward with what might have been a smile, assuming thunderstorms could smile. "Mr. Webb, I am pleased to inform you that you have not only passed the examination but achieved the highest score recorded this testing cycle. Your answers demonstrated exactly the kind of creative problem-solving and unconventional thinking that Galactic University hopes to foster." "Sweet. So what am I studying?" "Given your unique cognitive profile and the academic chaos you've caused just by existing, the faculty has voted unanimously to offer you a full scholarship in our newly created program, Applied Chaos Theory with a concentration in functional cognitive disorder." Marcus grinned. "That sounds perfect. It's basically my life story with a fancy degree attached." As the crowd of alien academics began dispersing, still muttering about paradigm shifts and revolutionary consciousness studies, Vextar approached him with something that might have been respect mixed with healthy fear. "Mr. Webb," Vextar said, "I want you to know that meeting your mind has fundamentally changed how I understand consciousness, reality, and my career choices. I've been promoted, I'm getting hazard pay, and I've started 3 different research papers about human cognitive resilience." That's awesome. Hey, quick question though, do you think hot dogs are sandwiches? Vextar's 4 eyes went wide with the look of someone who had just realized that some questions were too dangerous for telepathic beings to contemplate. "I'm going to pretend you didn't ask that," he said, backing away slowly. Marcus shrugged and headed toward the exit, already mentally composing the story he'd tell his friends about his weirdest Tuesday ever. Behind him, he could hear the sound of an entire educational institution grappling with the reality that sometimes the best way to solve problems was to let your brain through a controlled party and see what solutions showed up to dance. After all, if chaos worked well enough to get humanity to the stars, it was probably good enough for a college entrance exam, even if it did require hazard pay.